deep in the heart of Texas again. Oh, folks, I'm telling you, life is a whirlwind. Sue and I were going to go camping. I take the Airstream out to one of our favorite spots. And I'll tell you, it's interesting what happens to you the older you get. This is just for me, okay? This is my experience. So probably, I don't know, let's just say a few years ago or several years ago or the other day. The other day covers everything, but I always had an agenda, and the agenda got fulfilled. You know, we did it, and just the way life changes, I'm open to things happening in a different way. So we're kind of getting things planned and figuring out, you know, what we're gonna do for this trip. And I'd made the reservations roughly 6 months ago for a spot up in Teton National Park for trailing. They're kind of hard to get. So looking forward to it. Been up there many times. And anyway, didn't really, life was going as normal. And then all of a sudden, I just kind of felt this impression that maybe we should check on things in Texas. And I even said to Sue, you know, maybe we ought to go there instead of going on our trip. Now, normally that would never have happened. Like I say, once something, you know, I'm focused on something, that's what happens. So as it turned out, it was the right thing to do for many reasons. So we had already made plans to leave, so that helped a lot. But now we were like, okay, well, it turned out to be a week of every day having a treatment for Jane. And so Caitlin had made all these arrangements, and some of them were kind of up in the air because she's gone most of the day with Jane and has 3 more kids at home, you know, kind of thing. So it's a tricky deal. And so that part was, you know, a huge blessing. I love to drive. So I told Sue, I said, let's just bomb it in the car. And we did. We took about a 2-hour rest stop, and the rest was bombing it. We made it in 20 hours, including the 2-hour rest. And we got here. It was great. Well, today, I mean, the car breaks down with Caitlin, and she took 2 of the girls, she took Jane and her sister to the doctor office about 35 miles away. And just as they're pulling in the parking lot, all the lights come on in the car and all this kind of stuff. So I end up taking another car down there, and I think, you know what, I'm going to try to drive this back. I think that'll work. Well, I just barely got out of the parking lot onto a busy road, kind of an expressway. And it started lurching, and lights and bells and whistles. And so I got off in a HEB Kohl's parking lot, and ended up, we were going to have it towed and take it to the dealer. So we just think, okay, if that had been Caitlin again, because she had a similar thing a few weeks ago, which I talked about, you know, I feel like, I don't want to sound self-proclaiming because I'm anything but that, but I feel like time is wearing on me to wear me down to where I'm relying, maybe not relying, but I'm a little more sensitive to doing something than I'm just driven, like, okay, I'm going this way and this is what I'm going to do. And I'm so glad I was here, and so glad to be able to help and do. The Teton Mountains will be there. I'll get to see them again. And if I don't, so be it. I've seen them so many times. They're here, and I love that place. But I feel like there's a time, it's time in my life to be a little more connecting this with this. And I really don't know why I'm talking about this, because it's probably just totally uninteresting. And I don't even know why I feel compelled to even have this channel. Occasionally I'll get an email or a message, a comment that is like, wow, I'm glad there's someone else that feels like I do, or things like that. And those mean so much to me, because then I go, okay, maybe this is why I'm doing, just to let somebody know there's somebody else that thinks the way they do, and that kind of thing. But I don't know why I have this little channel and do this, but I'll tell you one thing, it helps me. It gives me an outlet. So I really appreciate you listening. Now, a couple of interesting things. Where do I start? You know, I did a video on this a while back, maybe 3 or 4 videos ago, but I talked about the differences we have amongst us, especially in the church. Just like so opposing. And I'm talking about a difference that is very divisive. Not just like, yeah, you know, I don't really care for the color of shirt you're wearing, or I'd never wear that, or I'd never do that, or I'm not really interested in traveling to the places you go, or, you know, vice versa. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about not necessarily doctrinal things, but things of that nature. So in Utah, which I know many of you have nothing to do with Utah, but this is where I live. So there's a county called Davis County. And in Davis County, it's just north of Salt Lake City. It's the next county north of Salt Lake. And in Davis County, the school district there voted, and it's now policy, that the Bible will not be, I shouldn't say it won't be allowed. I'm not sure if you can personally take one, but in elementary and in middle school or junior high, depending on where you're at, the Bible will not be available. And it hasn't been taught anyway. And when I first heard this reported, and then subsequently a few days later, it was the Book of Mormon also. And the person that petitioned this, or it might have been an organization, they wouldn't say, but said that the Bible had violence and pornography, in a sense, in it. And same with the Book of Mormon. And, you know, I won't argue with violence, for sure. There's some awesome violence in it. Never bothered me. I don't. And really the reality of the human interaction between a man and a woman, that's never bothered me either in either. The second to the last chapter in the Book of Mormon is probably the most graphic imagery we get of disgusting events, and how far humanity falls without the gospel of Jesus Christ in their lives. And it's terrible, it's horrible. And the Bible's just full of just crazy stuff, you know. I mean, anything from the Songs of Solomon to you know, Noah being drunk and naked, and, you know, just I I know you guys are all going to point out stuff, but I'm just throwing out some things there. And of course, decapitations, all kinds of gross diseases and things, described. But when I first heard that Davis County had done this, I was like, what the H is going on here? This is ridiculous. The Bible, of all things, to not have in a school. And I still feel that way. Well, I've now since heard other opinions that are just like, it's not that I agree with them, but I can certainly see where people are coming from. And one of those is this idea of, it's not a bad thing to have happen, both the Bible and the Book of Mormon, because it separates church and state. And that's here's the problem with that. This is me thinking. Here's the problem with that thinking, is that there are other types of religion taught in school. And so when you eliminate that, there's the religion of academia, there's the religion of critical race theory, CRT, there's the religion of evolution, these are religions. If you really think of the concept of a religion, and you can look up all kinds of different definitions, but it's a belief in something or an organization or a central thought, and you either worship that way or you worship that thing or you worship in that way. And then all of a sudden, these things are actually religions. Atheism is a religion, right? It's not a Christian religion or a religion based on God, but it's a religion. Academia, it's a religion. It's you can go on and on and on. Now, these are allowed in school and promoted in school. You could say the alphabet, the Beware of Pride. we're in that month, and we're getting inundated, and I'm going to talk about something on that in just a second. But the alphabet group is a powerful religion, and that's everywhere. All the local newscasts in Utah advertise it. Fox News on the national level, they advertise it. It's a religion in a sense. Okay, so if it was really true to separate church and state, so that at schools none of this other stuff was taught, then I would go, okay, that's a fair deal. But where it is taught, I feel like it not only should the Bible be in school, but it should be taught. Now, it's another reason why the Pledge of Allegiance has been eliminated, because of the phrase "one nation under God." Well, that's a religious tone to some people, and so at one time that was never even considered a religion, just a belief in God. It was just the way it was, but not anymore. So certain aspects that a lot of us hold dear have been eliminated in the name of separating church and state, but then all the other secular stuff that is a religion is allowed. Okay, enough of that. So that was an interesting event that took place here in Utah on a local level, where you would think that kind of thing wouldn't happen. Now, an interesting thing that took place. I know I'm bouncing around a lot here. I'm standing and kind of rocking back and forth. So The Chosen had an interesting thing happen. The Chosen, many of you love The Chosen. We love The Chosen, and love the episodes, love the portrayal of the apostles, and certainly Jesus and the children in there, and just everything. It's just an amazing thing. Well, on if you follow any of this, which most of you, especially in the summer, you don't have time. So I bring it up just so you know a little bit about what's going on. But as The Chosen sends out these little ticklers of the filming of the fourth season and all this kind of stuff, there was a two or three different camera shots of a scene that they were filming, and one of the camera shots showed another camera. So it's just showing a scene that's being filmed, and a camera, and hanging off that camera was a rainbow flag. And so many evangelicals and Christians, individuals, came unglued, because it looked like The Chosen was getting a little bit of their, the message out that they're supporting this Pride Month thing because of this flag hanging on the camera. Now, I'm not going to get specific on this. You guys are just going to have to trust me. But Sue reached out to someone we know very well that's involved with The Chosen, just to find out. And the truth is that many times we don't know what the heck is going on, and what the individual situation was in this case. This was an individual person who may not have the same beliefs. He's an employee, and he had that hanging on his equipment that he was using, and it just happened to get caught in there. It's so slight, and I get it. I get why people get upset. But because we were blessed to know somebody in there, we got the full story. And this wasn't being promoted by The Chosen. It wasn't anything like that. On the other hand, individuals do individual things, and sometimes we have to just not get so worked up that it becomes so divisive against a certain individual. Now, having said that, let's take Target, for instance, with all the clothing, and you all know the story there, and some of it's really disgusting. Most of it towards children, transitioning, and clothing that supports that kind of stuff. It's just crazy. It's just crazy. Now, that is a store that's promoting something that's so different, in my opinion, than what happened with The Chosen, where a certain individual on the set decided to express something that they thought was showing support for something, but not being promoted at all by The Chosen. This kind of thing happens a lot. So we have to remember, if we're being targeted by an organization that wants us to believe a certain way and we don't believe that way, we have every right to say, not doing that. But we don't attack a whole organization because one person within that organization feels a certain way or does a certain thing. So I can do better at that, and you can do better at that if you choose. And maybe I'm not making too much sense here, but I remember when I was in a stake presidency back in the early 2000s. It would have been in the early 2000s. If you've been in that kind of situation, you get very close to counselors, clerks, executive secretary, people that you're seeing all the time. High council, there's a bit of a camaraderie there. And you come from all different walks of life. And I might be naive, but I would dare say that our political differences and things like that just never really came up. And I know we all didn't agree on everything and all that kind of stuff, but it wasn't so divisive. Just, 20 years ago, 15 years ago. Now it's like, it's so, we're so ready on both sides for a fight or for a disagreement. And I'm right up there. When I get something pushed in my face that I don't like, I'm ready to do that. But it seems like in the last few years, and I think a lot of it has to do with social media, it's a lot easier to say and do things when you're not in person. And when you're in person, there seems to be the ability to think things out a little bit better, the ability to see expressions on people's faces, kind of get a feel of and it might be the spirit, it might be instinctively, but the expressions are a bit tempered because you're getting feedback right off the bat, both body language, what they're saying, how they're saying it, and I don't know, things seem to bode well, better. Not always, and sometimes that's just not going to happen. Sometimes you have to stand up in a group situation. But I guess the thoughts that are on my mind is we have to think of always the big picture, and ask ourselves the question: am I going to feel the same about this in a couple of days as I do right now? Sometimes waiting a little bit is a good idea before you just bam, get out there and comment. And I'm guilty of that. And sometimes it's good to not only wait, but do a little investigation, do a little research before things happen. So within the church, out of the church, whatever it is, I'm not saying we should always hold hands and sing Kumbaya. That's not the point of this message. The point that I'm trying to make is that we don't always know the situation behind something, and The Chosen was a perfect example. I watched 2 or 3 videos where people were just pissed. I mean, they were upset. Okay. And I want my money back that I've donated. I'm getting rid of everything. And we have the blessing and the ability to go right to basically the source. And I'm not going to get into how or what, but yeah, pretty cool. And get the inside scoop. Now that's a blessing. We don't always have that ability, but let's do a little research. Let's figure some things out before we immediately jump on something. So that's kind of that message. Now, and there's way more to say on that topic. I'm as fiery and opinionated and way more than a lot of people in the church. And so I'm really talking to myself. Well, actually, I am talking to myself. But and maybe that's why I like doing this, is that it's my therapy. I talk to myself so that I can present myself a little bit better to the rest of the world if I figure it out in my head first. And by doing this video, that's what I do. But anyway, the idea of waiting a little bit, studying a little bit, researching a little bit, usually bodes well. We used to say, count to 10 before you lash out or say something. Yeah, sometimes we need to count to 1,000 times 1,000, before, but okay. I wanted to talk just briefly on some reading in John, of this week's reading that we're all involved with. I read a book. I've mentioned it a little bit. I don't have it with me as we're traveling here, but the Temples of Jesus, or the Jewish temple. I can't remember, but it's a Messianic Jew wrote the book, and I've mentioned it a few times, and hopefully when I get home I'll bring it up again. It's a fantastic book, but it talks about this particular scripture. So in John chapter 14, let not your heart, the first verse, let not your heart be troubled. Dang it, I didn't bring my glasses here. Let not your heart be troubled. Ye believe in God, believe also in me. And then these verses are very familiar to us as Latter-day Saints. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there ye may be also. Now this is interesting because we associate it, I think, mostly, I've always had, with the different degrees of glory, the different kingdoms after this life. Well, the perspective of this Messianic Jew, and this scripture is that he has the Hebrew background, in both speaking and reading and thought, which is huge, in my opinion, and he has both the aspect of the Jews and the aspect of Christians, and so he's a believer in Christ as the Messiah, but still holds to the traditions and the feasts, the holidays of the Jews that celebrate certain things, and he knows how they pointed to Christ, but was raised outside of that realm, right? Well, these particular verses, in my Father's house, the house is the temple. So he's talking about current time period, according to this guy, and he's telling his apostles, his followers, that in the temple there are many. Now, when we say in my Father's house are many mansions in the Hebrew sense, according to this guy, are rooms. So in my Father's house, the temple, are many rooms. Okay, and I go to prepare a place for you. So the temple is not only, or excuse me, these scriptures aren't only representing life after death, but they're representing the temple. And I'm like, exactly. I wish the guy could come to a Latter-day Saint temple and see that's it. Now, in the Salt Lake temple in the past, and Manti temple, I don't think Logan anymore, but you move from room to room. And in some of the smaller temples, you move maybe once, but you were in the garden room, right, at one time. Or excuse me, you were in the creation room, then you were in the garden room, then you were in the telestial room, and then the terrestrial, and then the celestial. So in my Father's house, the temple, there were many rooms. Then everything just works. So when I read his book, and then I read the scripture now in a reading, I remember him talking about this, and it just brings everything so complete. And I think that's why the temple experience over and over and over again is you're actually preparing, worshiping, thinking about, not just doing work for Kindred Dead, which I know is our focus, but we really are there for ourselves. It's kind of like a mission. It's like going on a mission. to proclaim the gospel and invite everyone to come into Christ. Some of you might have had an experience where you baptized a ton of people. Some of you had an experience where you didn't baptize anybody or didn't see anybody come into the church. And some of you had experiences of somewhere in between, or where, like, I'll bet you that for the most part, most of the people that if you're a returned missionary, most of the people that you saw come into the gospel, but through baptism, most of those folks aren't fully vested in the gospel anymore. That's a pretty, I don't feel like I'm going out on a limb there. It's just my experience. It's my experience with all my children our children that have gone on missionaries that we worked with, roughly 500 missionaries when we presided over a mission, the converts that came in. My experience as a young missionary, it's tough. It's a tough deal. But who got converted? I did. My kids did. Others did. Now, mission doesn't guarantee anything, but you go to the temple to prepare yourself for what's coming. And Christ has prepared those particular rooms, both in this life and in the life after, for us. He's prepared them through the atonement. So he was literally talking, as we continue to read the New Testament, you'll see how the temple became the focal point, and how he told his apostles, you go back to Jerusalem, and there you will be endued with power. And the apostles taught from the temple. Everything was about the temple. Now, I'm not suggesting that the temple then had the rooms representing the different kingdoms and whatnot. But certain things, I'm sure, were similar. And the message there is, this is God's house. It's where his presence is. This is where we go to receive instruction, where we do work for the dead. But ultimately, it's where we worship. We're in his house. He will tell us things that he'll only tell us in his house. It's where his presence is, and it's where he's prepared places for us. And we get to decide which kingdom we like, which one we feel the most comfortable in, which one has more love, and which one has the presence of the Lord in. And then when we think of the temple, we think of what Christ is teaching here, that I go to prepare a place for you, and the temple is symbolic of all of that. Then everything comes together. So this isn't just a scripture, in my opinion, on everything to do with life after death, although it is, and that's probably the main message. But before that, it's the temple. It's the temple in my Father's house. He could have said kingdom. He could have said the kingdom of heaven. My Father's the king, but he specifically said, in my Father's house are many rooms. Another definition of mansion, many rooms. I go to prepare a place for you individually. Anyway, that's it on that. And then we can't go away without reading verse 6. And Jesus said unto him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And no man cometh unto the Father but by me. And I have a little footnote there, and I've had it for a long time. No one cometh unto the Father but by me. And I have that as the veil, which is what? It's the temple. And again, And I was so pleased to hear the changes that included that, because I've had that had that little note in there for a long time. So Christ is the truth, he is the way, and he is the life, and it's all represented in the temple. So that's it for this video. God bless. Thank you for just your love and kindness, your prayers for little Jane. She's doing okay. She's it's just they have a protocol, a process, and this week is every day in our little port right here, where they administer whatever. I won't get into that, but anyway, it's an all-week thing. But she's doing really well. Thank you for your thoughts and prayers that way. And let's turn the heat down a little bit, but always stand up for what you believe in. And don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to do that. That's not the point of my previous comments. I'm just saying that there are times when things might not appear to be what they are. So God bless you all. We love you and look forward to talking to you again. We'll be here for about a week, and then back to the garden that's going to be out of control by the time we get home. God bless. Talk to you soon. Bye.